picking up where we left off last week. Actually, we're kind of going to go through the whole thing, and yep, he's already made his move, and so. Oh, are you gonna? Oh, I thought he was gonna go ahead and make the move up here. He's wisdom. Yeah, he knows. I think I made enough. If not, we can print some more off. But hope that you'll. Oh, I meant to say this earlier and forgot. Just let you all know, we Laura and I have decided that a friend of mine is having a pastors conference, I had a pastor in Indianapolis, and I just wanted to, because so many of my preacher friends are concerned with all this. They've not had very good turnout with their things, and so talking to Laura, and he's having had a preacher in, had guests, hadn't had a lot of folks show up, and I told Laura, I said, it'd be kind of cool. We planned on this, I guess, last month almost. We was talking about it, and I said, if we can swing it, and then my daughter called. Both of them did on the same day to tell me their check engine light came on their car. That's a little unnerving for a dad. Nettie's is fine because it spends a lot of time on, but it seems to do fine with it on. Jeannie's concerns me a little bit, and so I'm going to go up. I have a suspicion of what it is, so I wanted to go by there. So we're going to make, after tonight, we're going to head up to Lexington, stay the night up there, and address the car situation early in the day, and then head up to over to Indianapolis area where Brother Larry Hoff's church is, and spend a day or so over there with them, and then come home. Now you're looking at me like, Brother Dusty, you hate to travel. Exactly. And if God weren't telling me to do something like this, I probably wouldn't do it. And in fact, I had already gone through the process in my mind to back out of it, and then the girls called up with the car problems, and it's not really on the way, but it's an excuse for my wife to really get me to go. So we're going to leave out after service. So just pray for us. We drive. I had to play with the car this morning, trying to get a couple of things working. I had a bearing going out in one of my pulleys on the serpentine belt, and there's a pulley, an idler pulley right here, and then there's an idler pulley right here. Both are fairly easy to get to. Of course, the one that was really bad was on the back side of the motor. That was not easy to get to. I had to take the motor mount out and mess with a bunch more stuff than I wanted to, but we got it done, and we're going to. So since I worked on the car this morning, and we're going to drive it to Lexington tonight, pray that it makes it, because I always worry about that. But anyway, I want to let you know about that. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 8. I'm going to try to get through this tonight. We got a good start on it. I'm not going to go through all the get the boys up here and work them all out tonight. I've only got one boy I'm going to harass tonight, and he go ahead, come on up so you'll stay awake. And let me get you the right little paper here. He likes to hold the paper. He likes all the notoriety, I've noticed, and he loves to be up in front of people, and he brings a lot of a lot of looks to the stage. I'm not sure if they're good looks or not, but looks. Mama says very handsome. You got a face only a mama can love, something like that. I don't know, but anyway. Are you mad at me yet? Close?
You don't want to know.
Oh, David is such a good sport, and I don't think I'll be too torturous with him tonight. Honestly, I mentioned it earlier in our discussions over the last few weeks, and I'm not sure we'll be going in this angle a whole lot more, maybe a couple of things. I promise you, once you go down this thought pattern that we've kind of laid out, and realizing that the simple-minded one is ultimately the goal for the wise one or wisdom, because the battle is over foolishness and wisdom, and I think the two characters that Proverbs uses a lot. Not exclusively, but a lot is prudence, and prudence is, if you will, pulling one or attempting to pull the simple toward wisdom. The fool is basically the one that's discounted, knows the truth, doesn't care about the truth, is going to do what he wants to do in spite of the truth, and so that's dangerous over there. We had one in between, and I'm not going to get everyone up here for time's sake, but the scorner, we'll do that probably next week and lay it out and take it. I want to show you how to apply this concept in your reading of Proverbs. And let me encourage you, if you'll read the book of Proverbs, you're going to see, especially with this layout, it will become more clear what the writer of Proverbs, I've said this before, I used to think Proverbs was a bunch of just ideas, just thoughts. Have you ever read Socrates, books that Socrates has written, Plato? You ever read any Plato? Let me encourage you to read some Plato. You won't know what he's talking about, but it's just a guy sitting there thinking, and he's writing down what he's thinking. And I think, honestly, and I'm being maybe funny, but not, David's got that kind of mind. And David's parents will tell you, David's got that kind of mind where he can be looking at you, you can be discussing something serious, and you got a discussion going on, and you look at David, and David will say something. It's not in correlation with anything that's going on in your world, and it's not in correlation with anything going on in the world around him, but if you think about it, it's like, yeah, you got a point. And so David would fit, and I'm not totally picking on you, maybe a little bit. No, I'm not. Seriously, he's got the kind of mind that thinks, and though we refer to it in the education world, whether it be his parents or teacher or preacher, would think of that kind of mind as, this one just doesn't care. He does care, but what he cares about doesn't correlate with what you care about at that moment. And so that's where his mind goes. Guys like this are thinkers. And a lot of the things that are made, I watch that How It's Made program. And I was watching, they made tires the other day, and it showed how they made tires, and somebody figured out rubber and how to make rubber work, and then they put steel belts in the tires. We hear steel belted radials, you hear that. And they put steel in the rubber, but when they were making the steel, and it shows them pulling the steel into real small little cords, and it gets them real thin. But I know inside of a tire, it doesn't look like steel. It doesn't look like steel. I mean, the outside of the little steel rods in there really don't look like steel. Do you know why? Because rubber doesn't adhere to steel, but it does adhere to zinc. And so if you coat that steel with zinc, then when you put it into the rubber, it bonds with the rubber, and then it holds still. When the guy's explaining this on how it's made, I'm thinking, who in the world figured that out? I mean, what fella sits around and thinks of, okay, the rubber's not sticking to the steel, let's find something. How about zinc? Oh, yeah, look, Shazam, it worked. Who does that? Guys with a brain like his that lives in the twilight zone, as we might call it. And so, seriously, I used to think the book of Proverbs was a book written of just a bunch of thoughts like that. But in reality, there's a purpose behind all of it as it's written, and there's a direction that's going in it. And from chapter to chapter, you can see that. We went through chapter 7, talking about the fool and the scorner, trying to tie them together. It mentions wisdom, but it shows wisdom. The fight that wisdom has is the scorner, and the foolish side looks very appealing to our flesh. And since it does, we tend to wander down that path because it's the path of least resistance. How many of us prefer that? You're looking at a guy now that looks, when we went in Walmart the other day, I told Laura, she said, I want to go over here and here and here. No, we're going to go over here. And she said, why? Because this is what we need. But I wanted to look at this stuff, but my legs don't want to look at nothing. It sounds weird because, you know, your eyes are the one that looks, but my legs don't want to walk to wherever I have to look at that stuff. And so this is how I think if we realize that Solomon had a purpose, and he's trying to draw a whole image here for us to understand. We talked about the wisdom, the cry of wisdom, and that's what we've defined this as. I'm not going to make wisdom cry tonight because I think it overloaded him last night. And I don't mean cry like weep, and I mean cry out, like holler out. He does like to holler out. But so get your little papers. I'm going to probably do more filling in the blanks. I may elaborate on some things here and there. But ultimately what you have here is you have wisdom crying out. And if you'll find, and we will find, that as wisdom is described and wisdom verbalizes here and expresses herself, if you will, up to this point in Proverbs, there's been a lot of descriptions of what wisdom is, but now we hear from wisdom itself, and we hear wisdom's heart's desire. And so as we go through this, and do you want to hold this all night just to stay awake? I hate you just standing there, but you look so cute doing it. But the first thing I have, number one, I put the plea of wisdom. The plea of wisdom. Well, let me say this for those of you on Facebook. This is the same notes we handed out last week. You can find it on it's connected to what last week's lesson. And so just go and print it out if you'd like to follow along. If not, I think there'll be some things to take note of. Seriously, there's a lot here in the book of Proverbs chapter 8. This chapter 8's 36 verses. I think there's only one other chapter in Proverbs that has 36 verses. The rest have fewer verses. So there's a lot wisdom has to say. And so we're going to jump into it. Number one, the plea of wisdom. Wisdom is available for everyone. Wisdom is available for everyone. Everyone can get wisdom. And we'll talk about this. All right, here we go. Verse 1, doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of the high places, by the way of the high places of the path. She crieth at the gate of the entry of the city, at the coming in at the door. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is as the sons of men. O ye simple, verse 5, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be of an understanding heart. So the first thing wisdom's teaching us is that it wants us to understand. But not only that, wisdom's desire is for everyone to understand. Wants everyone to get it. So I put a little bullet there. The plea is for both the simple and the fool. In this case, it's not just after wisdom on this side. We've had the layout here. We put wisdom over here, and wisdom is crying out to the simple one, crying out to the prudent, crying out to the scorner, and crying all the way over to the fool, because wisdom wants everyone to get it. Because it knows that's what's best. Number two, the place of wisdom. Where is wisdom found? And I put a dash in speech or words. In our words matter. Look what it says in verse 6. Here, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing forward, and defining forward is twisted or perverse in them. It's not perverted. So when I speak, I'm speaking right. This is why it's imperative that we as Christians get in our Bible. But I believe it's imperative that the world as a whole get in their Bible. Because I believe if the world as a whole get in their Bible, there'll be a lot more of us Christians. And if people would understand what's going on in the Bible, they could see direction and clearer direction. This is why, and I've heard there's a pretty good sized pocket of people that are church-going people that are Christians that did not vote, voted one way, contrary to what my brain thinks, and contrary, I believe, to truth. and biblical truth for sure, and yet they think it is okay, and that doesn't line up. If you see this, God's desire is for us to not have vitriolic, twisted words. Say what you mean. You know one thing, and here I go again talking about the president again. Do you know the president didn't always say things my favorite way of saying things? But you know what? He always meant what he said, didn't he? And he always has. He just says it. Now, some people don't like it when you just blatantly say something, especially the truth. It hurts some people, and some people don't like it. But the truth is the truth, and you can't change it. I'm in a difficult spot anymore because, and of course, a concern we as preachers have is that now our speech is going to be monitored because of the big social media push, and they're going to police everyone. And the concern is that when the Bible talks about sin, that the whoever it is, the media folk, the police, the fact checkers they call themselves, when they don't like it, it doesn't meet what they like, even though it's the truth, they're going to blackball me, just like they are blackballing others. And the concern is that there's going to be a lot of us that aren't going to be able to say what we're supposed to, what the truth is. It's just like David here. When David doesn't do what he's supposed to do, mom and dad fuss at him, right? Okay. Does David like it when mom and dad fuss at him?
I don't.
No. Now,
Thank you for answering that question for me.
I was helping you. Now, whether David likes it or not, does David have to conform to it and just go along with it? Or if David throws too much of a fit, David has to sleep out under the sun or the moon. And life is not fun. So David he realizes mom and dad are in charge of this ship. I better conform to what they want and do it. The truth is that the truth matters. And our verbiage here is talked about. It's important that we do things right. Verse number 9, they are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Now let me explain this verse real quick. They are plain. That word plain means straight. To him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. In other words, it'll make sense to you if you allow it to make sense to you. It's just like this. People that I've talked to a number of folk. I got saved as a little kid. I was taught the Bible from a little kid. So from an 8-year-old kid on up, I pretty much had insight into the Bible. I had the Holy Spirit helping me understand the Bible. But I've talked to people who are saved as adults. People who are saved as adults, they've actually got two ways of viewing things. Because when they saw things their own way, and then they got saved, now they're seeing a side of the Bible they didn't understand. They thought the Bible was just a bunch of rules and regulations and no one wants to follow them. But the truth is that the Bible is filled with how to live, how to do, how to carry ourselves. If you will, the owner's manual for humanity. It's right here in the Bible, and if we'll do what God says, things work out a whole lot better, though it doesn't seem to make sense to us. And so the place of wisdom is found in speech, letter A. What to do with wisdom? This is an important one. Our job to do with wisdom is receive it. Just reach out and take it. Because what wisdom is doing, wisdom is crying out here. Wisdom is saying, I want you to all to get it. I worked in the machining factory. I walked in a machine shop. I was often put, as a new guy, I was put with an older machinist. Do you know what the older machinist would teach me? Nothing. I mean, as little as possible. He knew he had to, the boss had told him, teach him how to get the machine. But when the machine would mess up, and I'd say to that guy, oh, how do you fix this? What is this? I had to learn what I had to learn from the machining world by watching people fix it and figuring it out for myself. Not because a lot of people were forthcoming with their knowledge, because in that field, people don't like to be outdone. And so they always, for job security in their mind, they had to keep it quiet to this new guy because this young pup was going to come in and take their job. And ultimately, I did. But I had to work really hard to do it. I had to really want to because those guys didn't help me. Wisdom is different. Wisdom has the truth, and wisdom is saying, I want to give it to you. I want to give it to you. All you need to do is take it, receive it. Verse 10, receive my instruction. That word instruction, discipline or correction, and not silver, and knowledge or discernment rather than choice gold. Can I tell you something? Discernment is a very important thing because that's the part where it helps us to understand and put things into perspective. That's the part of life that comes to grips and finally works out. I was talking to somebody earlier about Brother George Erdell when he works on a car. It's fun to watch him work on a car because he's a troubleshooter to the core. That means he finds the problem, but he's not good at fixing the problem. He wants to know why that problem began and how to prevent that problem in the future. So he looks at it. And sometimes in a car, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different things that can actually all look like the same thing that's happening, but it's really not. And so he will go through exercises, mental exercises in his head to try to pinpoint where the problem is. And he's called me early in the morning that one time with that car of mine. He said, I figured it out. When? Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was laying there thinking about your stupid car. And I thought of it, and I figured it out. And he's going through, what he's doing is he's troubleshooting, and that's discernment. He's trying to figure out, okay, this is what. Honestly, I promise you, I exercised this with my children. I often, and my wife, my kids will tell you, there would be incidents where there was a flare-up, explosion in the household. And we would have an explosion. After the explosion, then, of course, we had to deal with the explosion, calm everything down, everything's okay. And then it'd be sometimes 2 and 3 days later, and I'd be talking to one of my kids that had the explosion. And I say, you know what I've been thinking about, that incident that happened a couple days ago. Let me try to lay out to you why I think it happened, because I've been really thinking, didn't you feel like this? Yeah. And didn't this happen in that scenario? Yeah. And it caused you to get a little agitated, didn't it? Yeah. And so maybe if we would figure out how to stop it here, we wouldn't get to the agitation point. And that's what we call discernment, trying to figure it out and fix it ahead of time. And here wisdom is saying, I can give you that tool, that ability to use it. And then right under there, letter B, why should we receive it? Why? It's better than wealth. Look what he says there in verse 11. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that are desired cannot be compared to it. In other words, wisdom is more valuable than a bunch of gold. I told the school where I sent my kids, they were talking to me about something, and I told them, I said, you know what, I'm not so concerned about my kids' grades as I am about my kids' character. If my kids learn character, then if they want a good grade, they'll get a good grade. In other words, if you know much about Sam, Sam likes to figure stuff out. So Sam, when this whole media thing came on, Sam is naturally, he likes to figure it out. Now, Sam is, and he'll tell you, I'm not highly educated in the media world, but I know Sam well enough, and his mom and I and the school teachers that had him in the school he was in tried to teach him character so that he learned, if I want to learn something, I can learn it. And so Sam rolled up his sleeves on his own. Nobody forced him to. He figured out, he knows computer side of it. He knows the camera side of it. He knows the technology side of it. He also has dug in there and found out, okay, this lighting works in this video, and he's worked on lighting. I mean, all kinds of these different facets. He didn't learn that in school. But he learned that because he needed that, because he had a desire to. Someone taught him character. Another illustration, I'll just use Brother Randy back there. Brother Randy, do you know how Brother Randy killed bugs in the past? His boot. That's how he killed them. Occasionally, he may get a can to spray some wasp or get a shotgun to spray the wasp. But that he didn't. Do you know what? It's a science to him now. And he told me when he was taking the class, he said, man, Brother Dusty, that's cool. What's cool, Brother Andy? How they kill bugs. Okay, if that's what you're into, go ahead. I just highly recommend. bugs aren't too far from humans. Maybe if he learns to add more of whatever bug killers, he might kill us. So watch Brother Andy closely. Don't just take something he hands you and chew on it. It's just advice there. But what I'm getting at is if you want some. So my goal with my children was to teach them character. My daughter, Jeannie, started, what do you call it? Student teaching. She started student teaching Monday. And she was very intimidated by that. Now, honestly, Jeannie she scholastically has always struggled. She has, I think, a touch, probably a pretty good heavy touch of dyslexia. She struggles with reading and putting things together. But if you give Jeannie a regiment and you lock her into it, and we had to teach her that, and Jeannie will sit down and she will figure something out. In fact, Jeannie will flat out tell you, I'm not going to be the fastest one to get it done, but I will get it done. It may take her a while to get it done, but it will get done. We were talking when Dr. Jorgensen, the school president, was here. We were talking to he and his wife over lunch. I didn't know that, I didn't put it all together, that his wife is in charge of the student teachers, and she's totally in charge of student teaching. And I remember she was asking, she made a comment during our mealtime, and she said, you know, Jeannie she just doesn't seem to, I don't know, she just doesn't seem to apply herself, she said. And I said, yeah, a lot of people think that about Jeannie. I said, but I promise you, Jeannie catches a whole lot more than you realize. I said, now, on a test, she's probably not going to do real well. I said, but when you put her in a hands-on situation, that's where Jeannie's going to shine. Why? Because Jeannie's got character and drive, and she wants to do it, and Jeannie does it well. Brother George sitting over there, he's eaten some of the food that she's cooked. Every once in a while, he'll do something on the car, and he'll say, would Jeannie maybe make me, I think, what was that did she make a blueberry pie for you once? She made a blueberry pie for you a while back. And he called me, like, dude, that was a great blueberry pie. And she scholastically, she might not do well, but you put her hands in something and get away for a while. It may take a while, but boy, she'll get it done, and she'll do a good job at it. What I'm trying to get us to understand is that we need to understand this wisdom thing is trying to teach us that there's something more. The world, what does the world look at? Our scholastic scores, don't they? That number to get into college scores, the ACT score, that's the one that matters. That's a dumb number. Have you ever seen that test? That's a dumb test. Why? Because it's a test that in fact, we sent Jeannie, I think, to a helps class to help her. And the guy that's teaching this class how to help take the test told her, answer C. If you answer C, you can technically pass this test. Without really paying attention, you can pass. And all the kids are like, ooh, C is the answer. And don't do it that way. That's the cheating way to do it. Plus, it's probably changed by now because that was a few years back. But he said at the time, if you answer C, you'll pass this test. Now, that's not a test. That is not a test. A test is something that you got to think on and answer the question. There's got to be a problem. You've got to solve the problem. They're not teaching solving problems now. I'll prove it to you. If you go to a store down at Kroger and you pull out and you give them, your bill is 11. Let's see, 11 and a quarter. Is what you owe them, and you give them. Let's see, help me. I can't think of a good scenario. My head don't work that way. But you give them. Yeah, you'll give them like a 20 and give them a quarter. And then they freak out. Well, you gave me too much. I don't know what to do with that. Well, you want some dollar bills. You don't want a bunch of change back, so you give them the change, but they can't factor that in. They can't solve the problem because they're so used to the answer being given to them. This is the danger of the cell phone and the computer world. Just saying. That's just saying. Because then your brain don't know how to add nothing and subtract nothing. It just sees what the number says. If it don't scan right, then it don't. Back in the old days when my wife had to do was a checker at the supermarket, she had to type in them numbers, all the numbers, and hit that button, and she had to type it all in. Can you believe she's old? Anyway, but all right. It's better than wealth. It's more valuable than wealth. That's why I receive it. Then number 3, wisdom is found in prudence. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence. That word prudence means shrewdness or craftiness. And find out knowledge of witty inventions. Purpose. That's what witty inventions means. Purpose, plot, or plan. In other words, an inventor. What I was saying about David's mind, and I don't think David realized this, probably don't. He, I think, gets frustrated with himself because he goes to David world sometime. Huh?
I realize that a bunch.
I know, but it gets frustrating, don't it, when everyone like points it out. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. If he can apply himself and learn character and how to control, okay, I've got to get through this in school. I have to do the stuff I really don't want to do. But if I do the stuff I really don't want to do, in time I can do the stuff I'm thinking about, because I'm thinking about some good stuff. And if we can learn the character on one hand and take the mind God's given us and marry those two together, here's what he's talking about. He's saying that prudence, that shrewdness, that craftiness, that ability to figure things out, and then take those things we figured out and create things, plot, plan, make something happen. That's what he's talking about, witty inventions. He's saying, okay, that's how this stuff happens. Verse 13, the fear, letter A. Fear the Lord. Verse 13, the fear or respect, reverence of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, arrogancy, and the evil way, the forward mouth do I hate. What's he saying? We're supposed, that word fear is not run around scared of the Lord. It's talking about a reverence to the Lord, a respect of the Lord. In other words, you have scientists now that have these great big brains and think they've figured everything out. And what they've figured out, they say, well, you know, God's not really needed because all this stuff accidentally happened when the Big Bang exploded. Well, that's sheer foolishness. It don't make a lick of sense that all of a sudden chaos created order. That's what the teaching of the evolutionist is, that we had all this chaos in our space out there, and all crashed together, and kaboom, there's order. Kaboom. Which one, Brother George? One of the planets has a bunch of moons that go this way, and then it has one moon going the opposite way. Do you know which planet I'm talking about? Saturn has all these moons going one way, and then it's got one wandering moon. Science says, why is that? Because God's up in heaven saying that's where I want it to go. Because God made it. That's why. Science can't figure that out. That don't make sense. Well, it don't make sense because God doesn't really make sense because our brains can only handle what we can handle. But you know what God did? He made order. And those moons, all this time, you got all of them rolling one way and the other ones rolling a different way. They don't run into each other. Shazam! How did that happen? All this chaos and explosion causes the Big Bang Theory. All that happened. No, the truth is that God's in charge of it. He put it all together. And that's what he's saying here, that when we figure out God's in charge, now God's running the show. And so when I look up and see the stars, it's not just a bunch of blatant Christmas lights that are flashing all over. There's some order and some proper function there. And sometimes the moon is here, and sometimes the moon is here, and sometimes the moon is here because the moon's spinning around the earth, and it spins at the normal time because God spun it that way. Could you imagine when God got up and decided? I'm convinced God likes tops, or he likes to spin stuff. So he takes marbles and spins them like a top. So when he decided, I think he just sitting there, I think this ought to spin this way, and this ought to spin this way. And then he put Saturn and put a bunch of different moons around, saying, you all go this way, and we're going to put one the opposite way, just cause. And wouldn't that make it fun, a neat design when you look at it? And God sat there and thought of this stuff. See, you think you're crazy, but that's just the way you're supposed to think. The fear, this fear of the Lord makes a difference. And then he says, yeah, you can go ahead and sit down. You're getting tired, right? Me too. I say they're thinking, the poor guy's got to be tired. He still look cute, though. I mean, in an ugly sort of way. But notice it says, the forward mouth do I hate. Why? Because that's one that takes the truth and twists it. Why does wisdom hate that? Because that messes up what wisdom is trying to do. It messes up what God is trying to do. It messes up illustration, the family. God made the family, a man and a woman and kids. God didn't intend for the family to be altered. Man decided to alter the family, and so now we can have a man and a kid. Well, you really can't. You can adopt a kid, but it don't work that way. You can't have a woman and a kid. God had order, man, woman, and a kid. Well, I don't like man or I don't like woman. That doesn't change the fact that's the way God made it. The truth is what the truth is. You might want it to be a different truth, but that's not truth anymore. Now it's your own concoction of what you think the truth is. And so now you're in charge of truth, not God, but ultimately God's in charge of truth. And God started this stuff and he made it. Number 14, verse 14, counsel is mine, sound wisdom. I put a letter B there. Wisdom is understanding. Because note the next word, it says, I am understanding. He's defining himself, wisdom is. I am understanding. Wisdom possesses strength. Letter C, I have strength. The last part of verse 14. Verse 15 gives you the strength that it has. By me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, nobles even the judges of the earth. Letter D, seek wisdom while you're young. Now this is important because if you get used to not seeking wisdom, then it's harder for you to learn to find it. It's just like if you haven't learned memory verses before, and all of a sudden your crazy pastor comes up with an idea, let's all learn memory verses. It ain't going to be easy if you've never done it before. We're going to have to work at it. And even when we work at it, you're still going to be, I really didn't get it. Because we got older, we're not used to it. Verse 17, I love them that love me. Those that seek me early shall find me. Now, I don't believe this is talking about a time of day. Some people will say that. Well, then you have to seek the Lord before the morning light. Or you have to seek him at first light. When you first get out of bed. I don't believe that's what it's saying. It's I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. I think he's talking about not a time of day, but a chronology of life. In other words, as a kid, when you find out about Jesus, start seeking wisdom. When you find about what true wisdom is, start seeking that wisdom. Don't wait. Don't wait, because you're going to miss it. You're going to miss it. And I know a lot of friends of mine that grew up in the same environment I did that as kids didn't engage in learning God's word. And so they are struggling now late in life. And many times oftentimes you'll hear me say, when I went to school, I didn't like history a whole lot. A bunch of dead people, a bunch of lists, a bunch of dates. You had to correlate with a bunch of dead people. I didn't know them. And I really didn't like history. Now I'm a 50-year-old fella, and I'm like, dude, I wish I'd have paid attention in history class because there's a lot of historical things going on. I don't even gather it in my head. I've had to go back and relearn some history on my own because I don't know it. And the reality is I dropped the ball because when I was young it was presented to me and I didn't pay attention to it. So what I'm getting at is that here when it comes to the Bible, that's why you kids really need to, even though sometimes Brother Dusty talks over your head. And I know sometimes I do, and sometimes you think, man, Brother Dusty, you're just so boring. Yes, I know that. Brother Steve told me that tonight. He said I was already putting him to sleep before. We were just chatting back there. And Brother Steve said, yeah, Brother Dusty already got me to sleep. He yawned, like that. And I appreciate the support and encouragement that Brother Steve gives me. But it's an important thing for us to engage in. Letter E, wisdom yields wealth. Look what 18 says. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. Letter F, wisdom yields righteousness. Righteousness is, in essence, right behavior. That means do right all the time. We talked about that before, that God desires us to be right. I lead in verse 20, I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way before his works of old. That verse I want to just time out real quick. If you want to get what God has and had from the beginning, that's what wisdom claims to be right here in verse 22. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of the way, of his way, before his works of old. God has wisdom, and God's saying to us, wisdom saying to us, hey, I'm letting you know God's going to let you in on the same wisdom that he had, and he got way back when. brilliant statement here that God makes and gives us a wonderful opportunity to gain that wisdom. Number 4, the person. It all started with me. In other words, wisdom. Wisdom is what started all of this. Look what verse 23, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While I was yet, he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the depths of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set the compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above and strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave the seas a decree and the waters should pass his commandment, when he appointed the fountains of the earth, when I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Verse 31 says, I was all these things to God before the earth was. And then he says here in verse 31, hey, listen, I'm in the habitable part of the world, which is what we are. We're inhabiting the world. And that my delights are there with the sons of men. Now, if you want to be real technical, I think this verse kind of squelches the idea that there's other living forms out there. I think this is telling us that God's delight was in the earth, bound peoples that he made because he created them, and he created us. And it says, rejoicing with the habitable part of the earth, people that living in the habitable part of the earth. My delights were with the Son of Man. Just an extra thought if you want to throw a little astronomy or astrology, I don't know which one it is, in there. True wisdom is God, and God is true wisdom. That statement there says, 1 John 1:1, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon with our hands, and our hands have handled the word of life. 1 John 1:1, or John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Look what verse Psalm 14:1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have all done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. Time out real quick. The chaos that we're seeing in our world today, in America today, can I tell you, the fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Majority of those people behaving that way will say there is no God. And the Bible's defining them. I'm not. I'm just reading what God says. Based on the Bible, God himself calls himself the truth. This is the truth. Even if people don't like it, truth is what the truth is. And the truth is they're fools. The fool hath said in their heart, there is no God. So if someone comes out and says, well, there ain't a God, we ain't got to do what he says, they're a fool. They've defined themselves. They've already diagnosed themselves. And you can read the rest of those verses, but I'm going to end at verse 36 and we're done. It's a warning here. Now I left that blank and a bunch of exclamation points. Warning. Look what it says, verse 36. But he that sinneth against me, against who? Wisdom. He that sinneth against me wrongeth who? His own soul. You do yourself damage when you disregard wisdom. And all they that hate me love death. Just for the record, a lot of what we see in our current society and current structure, thank you, give him a hand, he done good. A lot of what we're seeing today in our world, a lot of what led to the vote that we saw that our Congress made, wasting a ton of money to pull together what they're pulling together and try to do what they're trying to do. A lot of that is based on this final verse. He that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. What's wisdom saying here? Wisdom saying you got to watch out. Pay attention. That's why it's important, I think, for us to get into our Bibles. That's why it's important, and we'll talk probably next week a little bit about knowledge and understanding. I haven't really dealt with that a whole lot, but that's critical in gaining this wisdom, in the ability of prudence to help guide the simple one over to wisdom, they have to have tools. And these are two tools that God gives us, understanding and knowledge, and to be able to put it together. And we're going to talk a little bit about that next week. And probably that may culminate where we go with this. But man, what a tremendous little study of how God intended for everything to work. And it's a lot of philosophical stuff, but I promise you it's great stuff. And if we'll realize that if we'll plug into God's way will lead us a whole lot better, much more productive for us, much more beneficial for us if we would just allow ourselves to follow it. Our Heavenly Father, boy, what a tremendous book this Bible is that you gave us. Thank you for it. Boy, the wisdom we can learn from it. Lord, I pray that you'd help us to apply the principles and truth. And Lord, as we read Proverbs chapter 8, may we heed the cry that wisdom makes. May we learn from it. I pray that you bless us through the rest of this week. Be with our people that are sick and struggling. Certainly be with our nation. Bless us as we go on our way tonight. Bring us back to your house again on Sunday, I pray, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. You are dismissed.